Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk ETC. I have NinjaPool with me today, who is a talented and very involved miner, otherwise known as Rhett Anderson, and he's going to enlighten us today on everything and anything to do with mining that you ever wanted to know. So welcome, Rhett.
Hi, Christian. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk to everybody in the community out there. And I'm really excited to get started. So let's go.
Okay, great. Now I can vouch for NinjaPool. I met him in Hong Kong. We had a dinner at one of the nights there, and we were talking about ETC. And he was a great guy. And he was really the life of the dinner. He's very he's just very entertaining. Not a shy person. So it was really fun to talk with him. And he's obviously passionate about ETC. So I'm sure it'll be a great show. So I just told already the audience a little bit about you, but why don't you elaborate, Rhett? Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about your background, maybe your education, jobs you've had, anything you want to share? Why don't we start there?
I basically finished university and I kind of did a little bit of Japanese at the end of my postgraduate course, and that led me to Japan. I met some people through that, obviously some Japanese people, and I came to Japan on my way actually to Europe. And I kind of got stuck in Japan. I never ended up going to Europe to a job interview I had there. So we got kind of Japan's a great country. So it was just 20 years later, I'm still here. So
where did you go to university, and what country did you grow up in? I think the accent is distinct.
Yeah, I'm originally from Australia, and then I went to university in Australia and New Zealand, and then I went to the University of Otago in the South Island of New Zealand, and then that's where I met some Japanese friends through a university course, and then I got invited to meet up with them in their hometown, Sapporo, in northern Hokkaido. So that's pretty much how I ended up in Japan.
So you were on your way to Europe, but you never made it to Europe. You loved Japan, and so you ended up staying there.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Back then, it was very easy to just kind of land here and get a job English teaching. And of course, if you had an interest in the language and the culture, which I'd already gotten through obviously video games and manga and various other things that had kind of I'd been exposed to at a young, so mainly games.
Right.
So I mean that was the thing. It was kind of organic. It just felt very natural. And then all of a sudden, I looked up one day and I'd been here for 5 years. So then I was kind of, I've got to do something. I can't be an English teacher forever.
Right.
So
we were talking.
A lot of them obviously just go home eventually.
We were talking before the show, so I reminded Rhett of an interesting comment I never forgot in Hong Kong, where he said that Japan was actually a very affordable place to live, and a lot of people were skeptical. But I was just mentioning it again before the show, and he clarified that as long as you stay away from the major cities, then that's when you get a lot of bang for your buck, and it's very affordable. So anybody that wants to visit Japan, there you have it. So it's a good deal, apparently.
Yeah, there's a lot of Airbnb now, so I mean that makes it a lot more affordable too. And obviously, you can there's a lot of wireless Wi-Fi connections and stuff, so you can use your phone here and whatnot. So I mean generally it's pretty on a par. There's a lot of LCCs, low cost carrier airlines running now. So all this is in the last 5 years, of course. So
and what did you study in the university?
I studied business administration. So, basically I did a BCom in marketing and business admin.
Uh-huh.
So, hoping to work for Sony, actually. So
Okay.
that was my goal, was to end up in London at Sony.
Okay. Actually, I've worked for Sony.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that I had a connection. Wow.
this
That
was
sounds pretty cool.
a temporary job. It was a maquiladora, I think they call it. It was on the border of Mexico with America, San Diego, and I did some work for them temporarily at one point a long time ago. But yeah, that was an interesting experience. Why don't you now describe how you went from your business degree and how you evolved towards the blockchain space, and then how you got stumbled into the Ethereum Classic land. You want to tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, we were developing. I ended up starting a project management business because I in my spare time I did a project management overlay to my degree, so like a project management professional kind of thing. So we were managing projects.
Okay.
And then initially it was developments.
Okay.
In a ski resort in northern Japan, a place called Niseko. It gets amazing powder, so powder snow, so it's great for skiing. So we were doing that, and then the earthquake happened in Japan.
Okay.
So right after that, there was they shut down all the nuclear reactors, and that led to the birth of the feed-in tariff for renewable energies, and primarily solar. So we had already done a building in Niseko, and it was called Echo 260, and we'd used a lot of renewable energy, leading technology in renewable energy on that building, and one of them was solar and passive geothermal. So I got really interested in solar, again. So I'd always had interested in gaming and computers and whatnot, but then I kind of got interested in solar. And then I had a friend who was actually doing all of our IT work. He was a consultant, the guy David Sperling, who you probably met at the ETC Summit in Hong Kong briefly, I think. So yeah, he was there, and he'd already done he was running all his servers off solar down in Hakodate. So we just kind of got together, and then this feed-in tariff emerged from the wreckage of the earthquake. And Japan all of a sudden had the biggest and best feed-in tariff in the world. So it created a development boom, but in solar development, large-scale commercial solar.
Okay.
So in amongst all of that, David and everyone knew about Bitcoin. We were all kind of following it, like everybody back in 2013, late 2012. And because Mount Gox was based in Tokyo. So when that imploded, it created a lot of interest, and we'd already been watching it before that. And one of our project managers is this guy Garrett, who still works for us now. He was all over it. He was dealing in it, and had signed up at Mount Gox, and was every day he was showing me his portfolio, and and I threw some money in it as well, and I was watching it, and we started to read about it, and basically got the bug. So that's how it started. And then when Ethereum kicked off, the whole thing with Ethereum and the crowdfunding movement that came in behind it, we kind of got very interested in then, and started to become more serious about the whole ideology and mythology behind blockchain and everything. And once that mainnet launched, we started to dabble in investing in it, and started to look at the tech behind it.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
So what was the connection between? So you mentioned that solar power was, people were investing in solar power in Japan because the nuclear power plant incident, and so people wanted to find other energy sources. But how did that? What did that have? I mean, obviously later on with mining, it had to do with mining. But what did that have to do initially? When you were looking into Bitcoin, what did that have to do?
Solar's disruptive in the terms it's clean energy, and it's disrupting traditional, fossil fuel based, economies, and the centralized generation of electricity. So one of the first technologies was the distribution of solar. Distributed solar means having it on your roof in your home.
Right.
So for the first time since the beginning of time, we can actually control and generate our own power. So we don't have to be paying this centralized utility that just, basically uses gas or whatever the cheapest fuel source they can get to make energy, and then basically sell it to us at a big profit. So I think that, and then when I started reading about the blockchain, it was also distributed and decentralized, and it was disruptive. And so a lot of this started to connect to what we were doing with renewable energies. And then from there, with a lot of the team that we had, they all also became interested and started to see the connection between how the blockchain could be used to monitor a smart grid and to integrate with the smart grid and whatnot.
Right.
And how to log electricity or electrons as they're produced from a solar panel, and how to log that to a blockchain to make it the yield or the production of solar, how it could be trustless.
Right.
And that way we feel a lot more secure about investing, especially when you're talking about third world kind of countries and applications.
Right. So
which obviously they can get more than anything. So.
Yeah, I've given that example for a long time when I teach a class, an introduction to blockchain class, and one of the potential applications that I give is I tell people to imagine a bunch of neighbors that are creating their own power, say with solar panels, and then if they want to share power, sell the power amongst themselves and friends and anybody else, that the blockchain would be a nice trustless payment system. So it sounds like you were either doing that or you were thinking along those lines.
Yeah, a lot of businesses started to pop up, or a lot of startups started to pop up. It's like once you have distributed power in the house A, why can't you, and you've got this closed generation facility in your home with say, batteries where you can store your own power, then use it in the peak times. And if you're not there using it, you could, transfer it to an electric vehicle or to your neighbor. And then how would you, bill and invoice for that power? So obviously the blockchain's a massive solution for that. It's actually, it's probably one of the best use cases for the blockchain out there, besides the transfer of value, in the short term. So
now, okay, so this show wasn't to discuss solar panels, but now you got but now the reason I said that was, now I'm curious, because are you saying that solar panels are that you have a really cheap source of energy in Japan? Because if it is, that's kind of interesting. I thought solar panels were kind of like nuclear fusion. It's going to be makes sense one day, way in the future, but it never quite materializes. But it sounds like you're saying that's you.
We have grid parity in Japan already. Japan has one of the highest retail costs of solar of energy in the world.
Okay.
So in Tokyo, it's about 25 yen a kilowatt hour, which in US dollars, it's like, US cents, it's 22 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay. So in California, most places in the States, you're probably looking at around 10 cents a kilowatt hour or something to that effect. So
gotcha.
Japan, obviously you get the best return if you can produce your own power, and you're paying 22 cents a kilowatt hour from the utility, and you can buy a panel now with the way that you've seen the Moore's law type effect in the solar industry.
Right.
Panels have dropped in price precipitously, like in the last 3 years. So now it's actually, you can easily set something up, and obviously the resources on the internet and makes it very simple and easy to find out how to do it, and the kits that are out there now are very easy to order off the internet and whatnot. So it's come to that point where what we call grid parity, where you can actually produce your own energy very, very easily and cheaper than what the grid can. So that's a big thing for the for the fossil fuel players out there, the coal people and the oil and fuel people.
Well, now
so I think they're a bit worried about it. But.
Yeah, but so the reason you have grid parity now is because fossil fuels are so expensive. But because I live in Texas, oil state,
actually, one of the most interesting things I found out about Texas is that it has the highest integration of renewable energies, like in the US, and if not the world. It's got more wind power coming out of Texas than anywhere else in the world. I mean, you can search that on the internet easily. So I mean, Texas is famous for oil and whatnot, but it's actually one of the most advanced states for renewable energy. So, I mean, Texas goes big on everything. So yeah, very cool.
All right. So and then with all your interest in power, it's not hard to see how you and blockchains, it's not hard to see how it was attractive to integrate both of those, right? And get into mining. And so, now for the just so the audience knows, I am a complete beginner regarding mining, and so I'm going to play the role of the complete moron on this issue. But maybe that'll be good because I'll ask questions that everybody else is thinking, but maybe they're afraid to ask. So why don't we start with, why don't you tell us how the beginnings for you, how you got into mining?
Yeah, I mean, it was during the Ethereum, thing, like when, Ethereum was around a dollar or, quickly jumped, and we were already very, very interested. So we bit the bullet and went to Hong Kong and we bought some hardware and brought it back to Tokyo and then started building a rig and downloading Ubuntu and getting it all up and running and whatnot. So since then, it's got a lot easier, obviously. So it was an organic process where I was a complete moron as well. So I was lucky to have some more talented team members from our solar company. So the two gentlemen I mentioned before, Gareth and David. So that Gareth's more like hardware based, and David's IT and hardware. So those guys quickly kind of figured it out and put it together. And I obviously was an interested bystander. So from that, I kind of learnt, on the job. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So, but now it is actually super easy. It's so easy now to get to do it. So many resources out there. So, I mean, like from the perspective of a complete beginner, one of the easiest ways is to just start with like NVIDIA cards, like the 1070s, 60s, if you're familiar with those GPU cards, and using Windows 10. You just use Windows 10 and NVIDIA cards, and then there's a lot of resources on the net so that you can use if you're having trouble, as opposed to when we started, when it was almost like all this secrecy around it and you just had to figure it out as you went along. So so you kind of start with that in mind. You obviously need to get some hardware. But the interesting thing that I didn't really know at the start was that when you build a GPU rig, a six card rig is pretty much the standard out there. You've probably heard of them as, everyone talks about a 6-card GPU rig. So you can mine a lot with that rig. It doesn't with that miner or that computer. I mean, generally, a 6 GPU card rig is a computer, obviously, but in the mining world, we tend to call it a miner. So that's what I'm referring to. A rig or a miner is 6 GPU cards and an array of other hardware, like you would have a CPU processor. You've got your RAM plug-in for the motherboard, your MOBO, the motherboard. You've got your PSU, your power supply unit. you've got your GPU cards, 6 of them. You have an SSD usually. If you're just a home miner, you'd use an SSD as opposed to using a server.
Okay.
And you usually use a USB stick with an adapter, so you can connect to your motherboard and you know, a flash drive.
Okay.
A few nylon cables to connect the cards to whatever frame you're using or your rack.
Okay.
Which you can just use a simple wire rack from any home center is how we start.
Okay. Now I have my first maybe moronic question then is, so you've thrown out some examples, like you could use Windows 10 and you mentioned an NVIDIA card, but is it important to really like the specific type of personal computer that you buy, the specific version of Windows, or if you use Windows versus Linux,
if you're a beginner, you should use Windows 10.
Okay.
You know, because you know, using Linux or more complicated you know, systems will ultimately be a longer learning curve. But once you get the initial like using the 1070s and the Windows 10 system, it integrates really well with the OS, like Claymore. Then it's very easy from there to connect to a pool like NanoPool or Ethermine, which are the bigger pools.
Okay.
So it all kind of, you know, fits in with that, and it's very easy to follow the step-by-step guides that are out there on the net and whatnot. So once you get it assembled, that's the bit that gets everybody confused, right? Is the bit, once you've got the hardware assembled, how do you actually, as somebody who's got no previous really computing or tech background, how do you get this thing to work? So that's where the Windows 10 and the NVIDIA cards make it very, you know, for want of a better word, idiot-proof. So it's the dummies kind of way, and that's what I would recommend. You can get this done being a complete beginner,
right?
In a weekend, you know, maybe only spending 6-7 hours in a weekend.
Yeah, but now if for somebody that is an advanced miner or that's really serious and wants to squeeze as much of performance, presumably they're spending a lot of time researching like the absolute best video card and the absolute best operating system.
It doesn't work like that. It works by how much is the video card, and how much electricity you're using. So you can get the most powerful video card in the world, and it's got the highest hash rate, and it can, you know, it can outperform anything. But at the end of the day, it uses more electricity. So that's the problem. It's usually the most simple, like the AMD 470 or the NVIDIA 1060 or 1070s are the ones that actually end up making you the most money because their buy price is the cheapest. And then they only use a small amount of wattage to drive the car. So here's something like,
yeah.
Oh,
no, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So see, that makes sense though. So it's not that you're making the high performance system of the century. The thing that you have to be paying attention to is the performance divided by the electricity requirement, or make the increase of performance by
the hash, but
minimize that makes sense.
If you can get 29 mega hash from a running at 105 watts per GPU card. So you times that by 6, obviously, to get a full 6 GPU rig or a miner. So that's where the profit is. So you can tweak the BIOS, which means that you can go into the interface of the card and up the amount of wattage it uses to get more hash rate. But ultimately, to get that extra few hash rate, from what our teams figured out, is just not worth it. You may as well sit at the 105 watts per card and get the 29 mega hash per second, then try to push the card to 32 mega hash per second, you know, and then basically be running it at 150 watts.
So people should people should spend their time figuring out how to get cheap energy or cheap computing then instead of fast computing. It sounds.
Well, that's the miners' mantra is cheap energy, and that's why you see all these people going to China or more recently, Iceland or Quebec in Canada, where there is a lot of abundance of cheap energy. So yeah, cheap energy is the key. So if you can run it off solar panels or batteries, or I mean, in the States at the moment at 12 cents. At 12 cents for ETC, you'll be making for a six card miner using 1070s.
Okay.
You'd be putting out around about 175 mega hash a second. You'd be paying 12 cents per kilowatt, say, just generic in America. Output of around about 1,000 watts with everything in your rig.
Okay.
You'd be making around about $7 a day US. So,
okay.
Over a month, that's over a year, that's $2,600 a year.
Okay.
So, and that's probably, that's based at ETC being, around $31 at the moment. So the key to it is actually mining and hodling, right? If ETC doubles, then all of a sudden that profit doubles. So
right.
The payback. So that that's the conundrum all the time is you've got to kind of be pretty savvy when to take profit and when not to. So there's a lot of which is kind of a fun part of it if you just have one or two rigs in your home. I mean that's a fun part of it,
Is that part of the stress? Is that when the price is going up, then everybody that's mining is loving it and they're successful, and then if the price dips, then all of a sudden the mood changes, and so does it go from like elation to depression depending on the price fluctuations?
Well, I mean, in the forums and whatnot, it seems to be, the sentiment of miners seems to obviously be connected to the market price. But those that are truly passionate about it, or people who love tinkering, whether they like tinkering with engines or any kind of equipment or model building, or if you have an aptitude to that, then this is a really fun thing to do.
Okay.
If you kind of like getting paid for stuff on the side, and that once they're set up, if you're using a very simple setup like this, like using Microsoft Windows 10 with NVIDIA cars and Claymore and whatnot, you don't have to do a lot. They're pretty much run themselves, and you can connect into them remotely as well.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, once they're up and running, you pretty much can leave them.
Right. Now I'm not the brightest person in the world, but it would seem to me that if I was going to get really serious about mining, that the way that what I would do is I would Google and find where in the world is the absolute cheapest source of energy, and I'd pray that it wasn't like some war-torn country, right? Somewhere that you're going to get killed.
No, I think that's a really big thing is the regulatory environment. So actually, America is a good place. I mean, if you're talking large scale mining, that's pretty much what everyone does. They focus on countries that have like China, for example. But the problem with China is it's got a dodgy regulatory environment.
Right.
One of the better, it's basically what it is. You just don't know what the government's going to do. And number two is that they're basically burning coal and fuel to fuel to pay for the electricity.
Right.
So not always, but I was in China recently and we visited a mine just out of Shenzhen, just north of Hong Kong. And it was run from hydroelectricity. But there's all kinds of money you've got to pay people, and like I wouldn't say bribes, but what's a good word for that? You just got to pay people money to kind of get things done,
grease the wheels. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Lubricate the wheels of commerce, or
Yeah. So really,
But I
it's
mean, having said that, I mean, when you're talking about Iceland or the Nordics or Washington State or obviously a lot of the eastern side of Canada, a lot of their energy comes from hydropower.
Okay.
So it's I mean, this is where we should be using mining. It should almost become a rule, for large scale stuff. If you're over a certain amount of, if you're using over a certain amount of energy, you probably should be in a place where you're using renewable energy from hydropower at least, or from another source like wind or solar. But that's a little bit more complicated. But
now, if you care about the environment, you should do that. But if you just want to make a profit, then you would not.
Yeah, and that's,
you just go wherever the cheapest energy. Yeah, right. But no,
and that brings me to like one of our big things is like, with ETC is, we would like to set something up in one of these areas, in a very cold country in Europe, where there's cheap power and an abundance of renewable energy via hydro, and then somehow make that some kind of DAO, on ETC where the community can actually be involved in that process, and they don't have to have the hardware and equipment in their home, around the world, but they can actually be involved in the verification process. And if ETC's long-term vision is to be proof of work, and then proof of work has a lot of reasons to exist long-term as well, which many people smarter than me are talking about. So I mean, and in this case, this could be something that the community gets behind, is that they do look to the future and look to be sustainable. So I think and that's a really big goal for us at the moment. We actually have a team up in Northern Europe at the moment, looking for a site. So I know that the process to launching anything on ETC is very community based, and you've got to work with the community. So it's not a fly by night type of thing. And we already have a couple of thousand rigs up in Northern Europe. So yeah, I mean, we have a proof of concept running. So if we do go to the next level and look to make some kind of model that we can include the community, then it's not like it's just a white paper and we're asking for money. It would be something that's done professionally with milestones and whatnot. So
if I understand,
but anyway, getting back to the basics, I still think it's important for the average person who's interested in it to do it as well as the way that we started. It's just more of a.
So long term, or one of your goals, if I understood you correctly, is you want to make a system where people can invest themselves in ETC mining without having to get their hands dirty and build mining rigs that they could still participate.
Well, it's just. Yeah, I mean, it's like the Dash kind of model. It's a DAO, and people would be able to invest in that DAO and have a say about how it's run, and the fact that one of the big tenets of the whole thing would be that it would have to use sustainable energy, and we would report that energy and try to show other proof of work chains that you can do it sustainably, for the long term. And I think that's the ETC ethos, right there, is to try to do it with principles and morals and ethics, and with a long-term vision, not a quick fly-by-night for profit type thing. So, I mean, a lot of that money could be generated for the treasury and whatnot, if those kind of ECIPs got approved in the future. And we've seen the co-op, the Ethereum Classic co-op. It's formed an advisory board now with some very influential people in the community representing it. So, and that should provide a big marketing budget and whatnot as well. So we're seeing a lot of maturity starting to happen. So I think the next thing is to try to get the mining end of it to mature a little bit as well. So
right. Okay. That's interesting. Your focus on renewable energy, I think, is interesting because proof of work kind of gets a bad reputation as right. It uses a lot of energy. It's gonna, the environmental effects are horrible. But then if the energy is coming from renewable energy, all of a sudden that criticism goes away. So that's kind of interesting.
It does. And being a blockchain that has an outward look towards that ideology will actually be beneficial to the whole ecosystem and community in it. I think ETC set a lot of benchmarks, with the way that they've done so many things. And I mean, and we really like to, as part of the community, we really like to push, this kind of ideology forward, on behalf of the community. So it's just one thing. And we're also interested in networking too. And I mean, obviously, if you've got, a mining rig in your home in America, you need to have low latency to a pool to be able to compete,
right,
and join a pool and whatnot. So that's another kind of thing that we're working on as well. So
that brings me up. That brings me to, so I was trying to think of semi-intelligent questions to ask you, and you just touched upon the subject that I thought maybe I had a good question for you. So you talked about the latency. So I was going to ask you how important the networking speed is, because I could imagine somebody in their home, and let's say that they create a block, they find the nonce, but then if it takes a few extra microseconds for them to communicate their block, they could be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, that's pretty very true. It's the biggest problem, and I think in developed countries it's not such a big thing because everyone has reasonable internet. But when you connect to a pool or whatever, it's that latency between your miner and the pool. So as opposed to someone who's maybe closer to that, to wherever that transaction happened. So if that block is created somewhere else, then somebody can get there quicker, and you're dropping packets, from a weaker network connection, then you'll ultimately lose out.
Right.
I was thinking of that. You might be hashing the nonce and you've got it, and then if you're dropping packets, someone can get in on top of you, and that's the whole uncle versus the block scenario.
Right. I was thinking of, what came to mind was, I know that in Wall Street they have these high frequency traders, and they'll do insane things like, try to decrease their fiber optic cable length a certain amount, to save a few nanoseconds. In all of those, little, really obsessive things like that become a big deal. And so I was wondering if the miners had to think about things like that, but.
Yeah, I think the top two mining pools, on Gas Tracker, which is the block explorer for ETC, obviously.
Right.
Etherminer and NinjaPool, I think. Those two miners have, grown exponentially with hash rate. I mean, you're talking about a 51% attack. Ethermine at the moment has 42% of the hash rate on the ETC blockchain. So the reason is because they provide a really good service, and they've improved it over the last year, and it's grown exponentially. So when you're talking about having like I said before, you use Windows 10 and you use NVIDIA cards and an Intel CPU and these basic components, and you build your rig.
Right.
Then you've got to connect to some an OS that connects to the blockchain. So Claymore miners are a very famous one, and it's very popular, but it has a default mining pool. So when you connect to that software, then they automatically try to connect you to NinjaPool.
Right.
So and Claymore is very, very popular within the community. So especially for home users, for smaller, for smaller miners, I'm not talking large scale here. I'm talking people with a couple of rigs in their basement and whatnot. So
Right.
a couple of six GPU miners just in their home.
Okay.
So, even with that kind of connection, it's almost like Internet Explorer from back in the day when Microsoft tried to bundle everything, right, and control it. So now you have Claymore's actually default pushing you towards NanoPool and which is great, but the point is that Etherminer is actually double what NanoPool is, because it's very fast and the rewards are great, and the mining community is kind of spoken. It's just people test this stuff all the time. They connect to all these different pools, and then they see what the rewards are. And I mean, we've done it ourselves, and Ethermine is a really it's a really good pool.
Okay. So, now, actually, now I think
the scary thing is how much more are they going to get of the hash rate? That's the scary.
Right. No. Yeah, that actually, hopefully, if they get close to 51%, they'll voluntarily kind of break up the mining pool to get.
I guess. Yeah. But it's not them, right? It's just it's a lot of little people that have joined.
Right.
So if you look at it historically over the last year, they started out with a very much smaller hash rate, and then it's just boomed in the last quarter or two.
Right.
From maybe 10% to 42%. So
yeah,
I mean, I watch it obviously regularly. It's only got to go another 9%. One, it's like whoa. Or if they join up with another one of the miners on the list, maybe I'm just being paranoid. But
so this happened.
But I mean, the incentive there.
Yeah, this happened with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there was a mining pool with Bitcoin that got over 51%, and they voluntarily broke it up because it wasn't in their interest to attack the network that's giving them so much joy and financial rewards. So hopefully the miners will have the same rational behavior and do that.
But I mean, that's our kind of goal too, is to kind of set up something. Obviously NinjaPool's our thing, and we're behind the scenes. We're working to try to build something with the same benchmark that Ethermine and NanoPool have, just so there's another option.
Right.
So we're trying to link up pools globally using dark fiber and whatnot, which I mean, it should be fast and it should be good, and I guess we can figure out a way to get people to try it when it's ready to launch later in the year.
Right.
Then hopefully that will provide some competition and maybe get a more balanced.
Right. No, that's good.
I mean, between the pools.
Actually, can you elaborate, because I don't know a lot about the benefit of mining pools, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience don't know. Naively, what's wrong with just setting up a mining rig and doing it on your own? What does the mining pool do for people?
Well, it gives what's a good analogy? It gives you the power of a whole team. So instead of you doing it by yourself, the chances of you actually creating a block with only a very small hash rate, like one rig, say 170 megahash a second.
Okay.
You would only get one block a year. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, the difficulty is 167 now or something terahash. So you probably wouldn't even get that, But the point is that when you're talking of joining Etherpool or Ethermine, ETC, the top pool on the ETC blockchain, and that's what happens once they get over a certain amount. It's almost like you have to join that pool, because there's so much more chance that pool's going to get a reward and just create a block.
Okay.
That you're going to get a percentage of that block based on your hash a lot more often than what you would just by yourself.
So it smooths out. It makes it more
out your
consistent.
reward.
So
Exactly.
instead of having a great month and then a bad month later and then a good month, and it removes the
Correct.
unpredictability.
You
Okay.
get one block a year on one day, as opposed to getting a little bit, every day almost,
Right. And so, but then
in the same,
go ahead. But it would seem
in the same breath,
yeah,
when you've got such a powerful or a large a pool that's earning so much of the or creating so much of the hash rate,
okay,
then it actually just attracts more and more people, because the rewards are greater and greater from that one pool, as opposed to even a pool like NinjaPool, which only gets half of that, is producing half of the hash rate. Between those two pools alone, you're talking 70% almost of the ETC hash rate, just the top two pools. So it's almost to the Bitcoin conundrum, where you had three, Bitmain, Bitfury, and Cannoli, or whatever it was called. That they had 80% of the rate, right?
Right.
They probably still do, but like you said, they were broken up at some point.
Right. I
mean, we're approaching that kind of scenario.
Okay. Now that,
not that it's doomsday or anything. Like you say, I mean, I'm not thing, but yeah. I'm looking at it now. Ethermine has 43%. NinjaPool has 24.5%, and then the next pool under it, F2 pool, has 7.3%. So yeah, there you go. The top two pools.
Right. Oh,
that's
I know.
In the last 24 hours.
Oh, I just thought of another, maybe hopefully smart question I could ask you. I remember there was some discussion of smart pools, or doing mining pools via a smart contract in a distributed way to avoid this kind of concern about concentration of power. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I've read a little bit about it as well, but yeah, I mean, I think it's, I mean, smart contracts have got to evolve to that level, I guess. I mean, at the moment, they're, then you've got you've got to have multi-sig wallets, especially if you're talking about, high value, smart contracts that are pointing towards a wallet, and they're high value. For example, if somebody's got a lot of rigs, so there's, and then you've had the parity bug scares and whatnot. So,
so people are skeptical.
With Solidity, it's still a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, a lot of the people, the big scale people are, profiteering. So, I doubt whether they would be risking, using buggy smart contracts for, high value.
So the state of the art in smart contracts in general has to grow before people would trust smart contracts for something so important like mining pools.
Well, I think we've seen, like, for example, with an ICO, people just, throw up a wallet address, and, you send your Ethereum or your Bitcoin to those addresses, then we've seen you get hacked repeatedly.
Yeah.
So based on that, that's why a lot of miners are probably
hesitant.
Yeah, I mean, there's Nice Hash, and even they got hacked, right? Nice Hash, and they all get hacked. Everyone. So it's just then a new one pops up. So sometimes having your own rigs at home and just joining a pool and then having your own wallet is probably can be a lot safer, right? A lot more fun if you enjoy the journey and the challenge.
So you've talked about the hardware. Let's talk about the software. So you haven't. So when I think of ETC clients, I think of Parity and Geth. But miners don't use those, or they prefer. What do they use in general? Is there some recommended?
Well, if you're talking about a beginner, there's Mantis now.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is basically has been built
IOHK.
Yeah, IOHK, which now you can also mine with that. There's interesting.
So
then there's Geth. Geth is the main one. Geth has a bigger share of the market. When you look at the nodes globally,
Okay.
Um,
But there's no reason that one
but
is
Get has
there's
version
no
share.
there's no reason that one is extra fast for or better for mining for some reason, head and
Well,
shoulders above
it
the rest.
changes quickly because there's always updates happening. So there's a lot of versions of it out there, but I mean, basically, parity is the most popular. It has 86%, and then Geth has about 14% of the nodes out there.
Is that the nodes in general or for mining? Do you know the percentage for mining?
Nodes in general, just node type.
Okay.
There's two main node types when you look at the node shares on Gas Tracker. That's
Okay.
the data I'm.
Right.
So, I mean, getting to your question, I mean, that's where if you're a beginning miner, and you're using Windows 10 and you're using NVIDIA 1070s and you're using, pretty much stock standard hardware, and then you connect it to Claymore. Claymore does the rest for you, so you don't have to worry too much about what's going on there, and it does all the updates and whatnot. Now, so that's why I mean it's the perfect time to be doing this at a home hobbyist level, because this is the first time in blockchain's history it's been this simple. So it's an exciting time, and I guess that's what those companies like Claymore and whatnot have kind of been building their software to get to this point where it's idiot proof. Basically, it's very simple.
Right.
So you just got to put in a few hours. And one of the best resources I've seen is called GPU0.com. Now, if you follow their mythology there, you cannot fail. It's really simple, and that is actually posted on the ETC forum under mining. So it's very easy to find if you're part of the ETC forum. And you go to GPU0.com, and then they have a great manual. It's basically a dummy's guide manual to building a rig. So
well, if you recommend it for beginning miners, then it must be good. So
well, it's actually the ETC forum guys have stuck it up there. I think it's probably Classic Kevin posted it, or Pie School, or one of those guys, and so yeah, I'm just following what all those guys that do so much work for the community.
Right.
Yeah, just it's easy for me.
Okay.
Those guys are the ones who do all the back-breaking work.
So, all right. Well, I think you've given a thorough introduction for people that were curious about mining. Is there anything else that you want to add before we close, or anything that we didn't cover that I should have?
Just a big thank you just a big thank you to everybody, and hopefully with the way the community's forming now, we can mature as a community and look for different solutions to mining, because mining is going to be the backbone of the ETC ecosystem for the future, if that's what we're choosing to support in proof of work. So we need to look into the future, 5 or 10 years, and think, do we want to be, how do we want to set this up so that we can be sustainable, not only for the long term for the community, but also for the environment and for the future. So
yes,
I mean, I hope that discussion is something that we can have during this year and maybe into 2019.
Right.
So I just want to thank everybody as well. It's been a great journey, and obviously, how we got into ETC was that we were very against what happened with the DAO and whatnot. So I think collectively, we really support the values of ETC. I think it's really one of the most decentralized and truly decentralized and immutable chains that's out there. So I think that's goes right back to the ethos of Satoshi, and what he had in his white paper about his whole vision for decentralized money,
right,
or value. So I mean that's the thing. I mean, I think we're supporting the right thing.
So it's not just a money maker, but you also believe in it, the ideals of ETC, which is great, right? Did I hear you right? Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's got to be built on something with principles and a strong foundation that cannot be tampered with or changed. So that was a shock to me, because I remember I love that story on the Ethereum website. Oh, we're immutable and code is law. I mean, that stuff I had on a T-shirt. So I thought it was just beautiful. It was, it supported everything about disruption and what was happening in the clean, the energy space, and even the fintech space, financial disruption of the traditional legacy systems and whatnot. I mean, disruption in a positive way, not like running in there and destroying things and
lighting buildings,
creating anarchy. I mean, positive disruption that happens, in a timely kind of way without crushing systems or people or ants even.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, I mean, that's enough rambling from me. So yeah, and also all the efforts that you put in, Christian. I mean, I've listened to these talks over the last couple of years. So, way back in the day when it was two of you guys doing it. So they've always been entertaining and a lot of fun, and I know that you put in a lot of effort, and it's I know everybody appreciates it. So thanks again.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thanks again for your time, and best of luck to you. And yes, we'll chat again soon sometime. All right. So
look forward to seeing you at the next ETC Summit.
Definitely. All right. So take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.